Hello everyone and welcome back to VivaTech 15, your weekly show to catch up on tech news from all around the world. We are here as every Thursday in VivaTech's kitchen, so don't forget to grab your coffee and let's discover the latest tech trends and kick-ass innovations, the ones that will blow your mind. Well, if you like what you're seeing and don't want to miss the next episodes, make sure to subscribe to our channel and feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. Well, today I'm excited to talk to Jessica Robinson. Jessica is the co-founder and partner of Assembly Ventures, co-founder of the Detroit Mobility Lab and chair of the Michigan Mobility Institute. Wow, she's a recognized leader, investor, and thinker in the global mobility industry with more than a decade of experience in mobility, strategy, and operations. But before we welcome Jessica, it's time for the Insider. Well, I did a little bit of research on internet. Here what I found out about mobility. A modern car contains over 100 million lines of code. In comparison, a 747 Dreamliner contains 14 million. 96 of the top 100 automotive suppliers to North America have a presence or headquarters in Michigan. In 2020, mobility ranked as the single largest sector among the top 100 startups to receive funding in Germany. And interestingly, in the early 1900s, 1/3 of all vehicles on the road in the US were electric. So how come we've regressed so far? Let's welcome Jessica in the Kitchen Talk to discover more. Hello Jessica, welcome to the Kitchen Talk. It's great to have you on the show. So how are you today and where are you joining us from?
It's great to see you. I am joining you from Detroit, where it's starting to be spring.
Well, Jessica, among other things, you are the co-founder of Detroit Mobility Lab, committed to the future of mobility, I think. So why did you create such a lab?
Yeah, we created the Detroit Mobility Lab because we saw an opportunity here in Detroit to support the next generation of entrepreneurs that are working in mobility. We've got a lot of great corporates that have been working in automotive for some time, but we saw a gap in what startups really needed. And so we created the lab as a place to come together, both in person and for the past couple of years digitally, but also to support what they need, which is business development, connections, and access to other resources.
Is Detroit still an important mobility hub today? And if yes, why?
I mean, I'm biased, but I would say yes, Detroit is absolutely an important mobility hub. And I'd say it's for a couple of reasons. One is the history that we have in creating the tools and technologies that help the world move. We've certainly put the country on wheels out of Detroit, but I would say it's more than that. For the way goods and people move throughout North America, Detroit is actually a really important part of that story, given the connection that we have to our Canadian neighbors right across the river in terms of trade going back and forth. Of course, we all saw that in the news recently. But I would say there's a third reason too, which is we have generations of people here in Detroit now that know what it means to create vehicles and services to help people move. And they are now thinking about new and creative ways to create businesses in the mobility space.
So how has the mobility ecosystems changed over the years? Who are the new players?
The mobility ecosystem really has changed. We went from a time and a place where you had decades old supplier relationships where the auto companies would say, we're designing a vehicle, we need it to look like this. And so you make the part, to the suppliers saying, hey, we have some ideas about what we could do or create new technologies, or even to say, we think we can do that part better than you, and we're going to take that part of the value chain out. So I think we're moving from that place of a supply chain and this command and control relationship to one which is more focused on ecosystem, where any one company's position along the line is no longer guaranteed. And I moved to Detroit with a company that was really trying to change that story. I moved here with Zipcar, which is one of the world's largest car sharing organizations. And that asks a fundamental question, do you even need to own a car in the first place? So we have a time and a place here in Detroit where we have all of that experience and that legacy, but the relationships are changing. And again, new companies and startups are not going to take the existing structure for granted and let that lie. They're going to try and find their piece of the story as well.
So, are you rebranding Motor City into Mobility City, to adapt to our new times?
Ah, a mobility city. I would love that if we could make that happen. But I think between Motown and everything else, that name is part of our story. But I do think the underlying question of changing, are we just motors to mobility, is absolutely true, and you see that with the big companies that are here as well as the startups. But I think we'll stay the motor city.
You're also an investor in mobility and assembly ventures. So I think you have offices in Berlin and Detroit. Why Berlin?
We got lucky when we found our partner. We knew as Americans that we wanted to have a partner over in Europe. And so when we met Felix, who is based in Berlin, we couldn't believe our good luck to have a partner with the same type of experience that we did. But there's something else beyond luck going on too. Detroit and Berlin actually have a long history and a spiritual connection in the art and music scene. So we've got that cultural piece going for us. But Berlin, for those of you that are in Europe, know that there is so much startup activity happening there. So for us, what we were really excited about is the opportunity to connect both of these regions that have this strong transportation and automotive history in Michigan and in Germany, but to also have a footprint in some of those next generation cities where you have the startup activity and the ecosystem in place. So our team is actually based in Berlin, here in Detroit, and out in Silicon Valley as well. So we think we have some of the best cities in the world represented with where our team is.
As an investor, what is the one thing that matters when you decide to invest in an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what matters for me is that a founding team and a company really understands the problem that they're going after. And that may seem like a no-brainer and a very simple thing to say, but it's surprising how many times you see a team of great engineers that truly haven't figured out what their customer needs. And not being an engineer myself, I don't necessarily get caught up in an exciting brand new technology just because it's a cooler way of doing something. I'm really out to make sure that what a company is doing is solving a problem, that they can price for it, and that there is a good market at hand. So I look for those things first. I love to see a great team that has maybe worked together or worked in this space where they're trying to solve a problem. And then I come back to that question about what technology are they using to go after the market and create something new.
If you had to start a mobility company today, where would it be and what would it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I just did in creating the fund. So had a chance to do this myself very recently. I believe that bringing capital to bear to support great entrepreneurs is a really important part of this ecosystem. So already well underway there. I would say personally, I'm also very interested in other ways that goods can continue to move more efficiently. There's been a lot of focus on personal mobility, how I might get around in a city or in my community. And I think we're really starting to see a shift to the other side of that equation too, which is all of the personal goods, household goods, food. How does that move globally? I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities there as well.
Now, let's talk about how people move. So, would you say, given the reality and things that are happening, the car ownership model that exists today, is it dead?
So I don't think car ownership is dead, but I certainly think the expectations have changed. And that's all the way through from how you work with the dealer to this type of service that you get if you choose to own or lease a vehicle. I think consumers have a whole new set of tools at the ready to make some of those decisions. And in many cases, it starts with the smartphone. So the dynamics have shifted if ownership is right for you. If you're driving a lot, if you have kids and family and lots of travel where you need to have the reliability of a vehicle, yes. But the reality is, for most people who own a car, it sits idle upwards of 90% of a day. I mean, that's what made Zipcar and car sharing so great. So I think a lot of people are re-examining, do they really need to? And so the question is, what comes next? I'm really excited by some of the new personal mobility options. We see lots of different scooters and form factors there in cities, whether you own your own personal mobility device or you use it in a sharing service. So I think what shifts now in terms of how we get around in cities in particular will probably be a combination of services. Hopefully starting with good public transit, some of those personal mobility devices, and then a car when you truly need one. Maybe you don't own it, or maybe it's some sort of shared ownership model in the future. And then maybe you carpool or do rideshare to fill it in. So I think a car still has a role to play in this story, but I do think the fundamental question of, is ownership changing for many people? The answer is yes.
Well, how far are we from an autonomous future?
Autonomous future. I'd say to some degree, it's already here. I mean, in certain cities here in the US, you can actually hail a fully autonomous vehicle and go from point A to point B today in a rideshare model. No safety driver at all. So we're starting to see it in select cities. Does that mean it's fully commercially available everywhere? No. I also think we're starting to see autonomy in certain delivery applications as well. We've got a number of those delivery robots that are moving around and being tested in certain cities as well. And then we also have autonomy in places you don't normally see it or think of it. You think about airlines often being controlled. The planes, the pilots are not necessarily doing all of those maneuvers anymore. And even in warehouses, a lot of the movement in those spaces is automated today. So I think what we'll see is continuing technology development in some of those places that maybe don't make the front page of the news in terms of autonomous rideshare. The technology will come along there. And then the companies working on the fully autonomous rides where you can maybe hail a service, they will continue to grow in certain cities. So I would say the future is already here.
So, Jessica, maybe one prediction for 2030. What do you see as the next big mobility trend?
I think the next big mobility trend is really going to focus on new forms of value creation. We focus so much on how quickly can you get from point A to point B, and the next generation of entrepreneurs are looking at other ways of creating that value, whether it's comfort or different branding, efficiency, and effectiveness as well. So I think that's what the 2030 entrepreneurs are going to look at, is new forms of value creation besides how quickly can you get from point A to point B.
Thank you, Jessica. And don't leave yet. Jessica will be back at the end of the show in the Speakeasy. It's now time to meet Alexei. He's going to show us the innovations that have stood out this week. It's time for the Tech Radar. Hello, Alexei. How are you?
I'm fine. Hi, Asha.
This is a very futuristic look.
Yeah, it looks great, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
what is it?
Well, today we talked about mobility. I know that a few weeks ago I already presented you some projects in mobility, so I decided to change a bit my angle, and you'll see that this is kind of linked to mobility as well, so I'll tell you more about in a minute. So I decided to select few projects that are tackling mobility issues and challenges, but not necessarily with vehicles. Mm-hmm. So the first one is called Tuc Technologies, and they're working on what they call mobility USB. So they basically develop accessories that can be plug and unplug in any car. So they're kind of using this kind of base car with different plugs, and you can just plug a seat or a steering wheel or a dashboard and just unplug it just in a minute. And it's super interesting. Great. The second project is called Starling Technologies, because as you know, when we start to talk about mobility really quickly, the subject of safety kind of goes in the way. So
absolutely,
what they're doing is bringing computer vision to crossings and streets. So the idea is that, for instance, they're developing this kind of experience of interactive crossroads, where basically the kind of computer vision analyzes the whole environment, and they just make sure that the pedestrians are completely safe before inviting them directly on the floor to cross the street.
Brilliant.
it's super interesting because it's kind of rethinking the overall ecosystem as a whole and not just putting technologies in vehicle, but everybody around it.
Global mobility experience.
Definitely. But what I wanted to talk to you about, and you'll see that it's linked to mobility, it's this. And this is the latest prototype of the startup that's called Biped.
Okay.
And what it is the first AI copilot for visually impaired people. So they say, and I love the way that they describe it, because they say that they're giving vision with sounds and they're bringing autonomous technologies in vehicles back to people in everyday lives, basically. So what it actually does is that, I'm sure you can see it on screen, the actual rear camera and what's happening in front of it. So this 3D camera is actually analyzing the whole environment around me and just prevents me if there is like an obstacle or someone and this kind of thing. So I'm sure that you can see that it's pretty much red there because there's something in front of me. If I turn pretty much on you, you'll see that someone is in front of me. But if I turn there when there's absolutely nothing, you'll see that it's completely green.
All right, so that's very smart and it's going to change the lives of so many people.
Definitely. It's a great addition to white canes, actually, that have some limits in what they can potentially do with obstacles or crossing. So it's a great addition to the kind of life and the way that visually impaired people could, move around the city and urban areas.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So looking forward to hear more next week, Alexi. So you bring us more exciting innovations, I hope.
Yeah, I'll try.
Right, I'm sure you'll keep it up. So that's it, guys. We are almost at the end of our show. If you're a startup watching us, remember, you can apply to our startup challenges. And if you don't have your tickets, you can also get them. I think the link is appearing on the screen somewhere. So time to leave. And Alexi and myself will meet you again next Thursday for our next episode. I leave you with Jessica in the Speakeasy. Cheers, mate.
Bye.
Zero. I love to sleep, get up late. Jane Goodall is my absolute hero. I'd help people move better. It's okay. The process is as important as getting there. I ride. Educator. Bike. German. Something that sounds like freedom.